Welcome back to Daily Dive. I've got joining me now Brian Andrews, contributor for Pro Lacrosse Talk and Bet On Lacrosse. Welcome, Brian, and I am so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So we've got the new injury rule, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on how that impacts the future of betting within the NLL.
It's interesting because when you look at any other sport and the betting world surrounding it, like getting more information is key for bettors to have the best information to look at, how the books are pricing these games. Unfortunately, at the current time, lacrosse is still a super soft market, and you don't see the same amount of attention given to the sport that books do for things like the NFL and stuff like that. So in the NFL, for analogy, if you have a quarterback go down and like everyone finds out about it, you'll see the books kind of rally to like change the price because quarterbacks matter so much to the offense and the performance of a team. The in lacrosse, it's a little different, and the books don't pay as much attention. Even from a sports standpoint, lacrosse is so much more of a team sport, and while there are some positions that if you're lacking or there's an injury, it might really severely impact your team. You have to think about whether or not the books know that much about the sport or the multiple variations of the sport when you're talking about lacrosse, or how much that might actually impact the game. And since it's still such a soft market, I don't think we'll see a lot of books overreact to many injuries, maybe some MVP candidates or things like that.
Mhm.
But if they responded so severely to individual players, I think we would see teams like the Swarm, who have Lyle Thompson, and other like really top players be more favorably priced on the books than they currently are. So I'm hesitant to say that it'll have a large change now, but as the leagues, outdoor and indoor gain more traction, I think we'll see more of, injury reports and trade reports influence the pricing in the market a little bit more.
Yeah, that's actually, I love that answer because that's a great comparison to the NFL. You think about sports betting and even fantasy football. Just what makes it so valuable is that football, with the stats, quarterback position especially, but it's a lot easier to be able to track and weigh by individual performance. Whereas a team sport such as lacrosse, such as soccer, some others, if one player is not playing a game, it might have a huge impact. It might not have an impact at all. There's just no way to be able to gauge it, so it doesn't make it as valuable in terms of the sports betting side. But we do still have sports betting, and it's great to see that there's been more conversations around it. The Seals were the preseason favorites, and I'm curious to know if, based on what you've seen, of course we're heading into week 2, but based on what you've seen, if that 5-1 value that they were favorites at, does that make sense? Are they the favorites in your eyes? What are your thoughts?
I definitely think they have a case for it. I think the opening lines at the beginning of the season made a lot of sense. The Seals had a great team last year. They had a great back end. They were fourth in goals against average. So if you want to rank a whole defensive unit by that metric alone, they're one of the best in the league. And they ended up losing a lot of games that were 1-goal games that really mattered when it came down to it. And they were able to make a playoff push regardless of that. So I think when they targeted key offensive veteran players from various different teams, and they were able to focus purely on building an offense and not needing to improve on both sides of the floor, I think it makes them a real weapon going into the season. So I think it's appropriate that the books put them on par with the Bandits and the Mammoth, who were in the championship last season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's tough this early on in the season, but we love giving some good predictions, and we love being able to break things down and see how it pans out as we progress along the season. So I'm going to ask you now to put a prediction out there. Who do you think is a dark horse team that could win it? Somebody that's not getting as much of that attention that you see come postseason might still be alive, still be playing for a title.
It's funny that you bring that up. We were just talking about this yesterday on Bet on Lacrosse, and I think this circles back to whether or not the betting markets will react to, surprising performances initially, or if there will be a lag. So there's kind of an analogy here to the injury talk that we were discussing, and I think the team to look at right now is the Firewolves. I know I may be overreacting to a win against the Bandits, but the face of the Bandits haven't really changed a lot, and the narrative for the Firewolves going into the season, similar to how you guys were just describing the Roughnecks, is kind of who's going to score. And I think that offense kind of got underestimated a little bit. And we already knew they had a strong back end. And Dougie Jameson really had a game. but the defense in front of him also had a really good game. They were able to push transition really well, and their offense was able to control the ball. And they won a tight game against a really good team, and they're still 18-1 odds like they were at the beginning of the season, even after a great initial outing. So I think that's a sneaky team that could make a late season push. That
Mm.
people, I don't think are getting the attention they deserve even after a great win in week 1.
Yeah, yeah. I think the Firewolves are a great team to throw into the mix because with so many changes, also, we just don't know what to expect. I think that also makes a team dangerous. It's like you have we always look at what happened last season, but you can't do that for Albany. It's a
Yeah.
completely different looking team. So we don't know how their chemistry is going to come together, how their roles are going to play out, who's going to step up, who's going to really, you talk about Doug Jameson and between the pipes, but in front of him, what does that look like? What does their offense look like? How are they running their defense? Who are they giving the ball to in crunch time? So a lot of question marks, which makes them a tough team to even face and even predict and have an idea of what they're going to do.
Yeah, and you
Well,
don't know
yeah,
in
go ahead.
general you don't know who in general, or we didn't know, I have a good idea who was gonna be the captain of that offense,
Yeah.
and they do have a number of weapons. I just think the complete picture, like you were describing, for what that offense was gonna look like was not clear, and I think we're getting a better picture of it, and I think it's better than a lot of us anticipated.
Yeah, and they've got a good mix of vets and younger guys and a good blend. And so now it's like, okay, how do they come together in game action? We've been seeing them on paper. We've been talking about them. How does this actually look week after week and how they're progressing to be able to get better as the season goes on? So, yes, that's a great point. And just wanted to also shift a little bit here and talk about your Twitter, your pinned tweet that you have. You've got a pinned tweet and an article and a shot by Ben Reeves, and you're breaking down the science of the shot, the 4 different schematic aspects of it, and even just being able to break down other lacrosse plays in general, like that analysis, that detail that you bring. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and the science of that shot specifically, but overall other lacrosse plays in general?
Yeah. It was a really incredible shot, and it was cool to have something happen in the sport that I care about the most,
Mm,
that was worthy of kind of like a sports science analysis, because we've kind of seen sports science go by the wayside in popular media over the past like decade. I think it's because a lot of people ran out of palatable stuff to talk about, because it can be hard to dive into these topics because it's a lot of complex stuff going on, and it's hard to make that then palatable. But that was a great shot to analyze and understand. And the gist of it is, you can see if you play the shot back in slow-mo, Reeves, starts with the face of his stick kind of parallel to his face mask. And over the course of his shot, he twists his arms. And that applies a rotation to the
mm,
ball clockwise, relative to the direction that he was facing. And what happens is, when you bounce a ball and it's spinning, after it bounces, it's gonna deviate slightly in that direction. And the amount it deviates in the direction of the spin depends on the speed of the spin.
yep.
So the idea is, if he didn't, flick his wrist, so to speak, enough or hard enough to apply enough rotation to the ball, it wouldn't have deviated so severely to make it pass. I think John Galloway was in goal for that shot, and you could even see the dismay on his face. He had no idea how that shot went in. So it was a great time. It was a great opportunity to just kind of like take a dive and investigate something that was really interesting, that a lot of people were like, "How did this happen?" So it was fun, and I hope to find more examples where you can take an interesting but simple enough dive that it doesn't get too convoluted in the future, because those articles can be really fun to write.
Yes, yes. Well, Brian, we appreciate the work you're doing to take a deeper dive into sports science as well as sports betting and just bringing these different elements in how we're covering the NLL. I mean, you talk about breaking down the follow through, the form. As a former high level soccer player, it's the same thing. Like, they're in sports, there's those specialty aspects that make the sport so exciting. That it's not just about athleticism and speed and strength. There's schematic ways that you're actually changing and altering the direction, the speed, the trajectory of the way that the ball is moving and how you're playing. So I love this because we need more of this. So I hope to have you back on here on the Daily Dive, and I appreciate you for taking time to join us. We'll be keeping an eye on how your predictions and thoughts pan out, especially with the Firewolves being a black or dark horse in the future. So we'll keep an eye on it, and be sure to give a follow. And thank you so much for joining us here on the show today.